My name is Shelden Nuñez-Velarde. I'm a master potter, Jicarilla Apache master potter. Um, I also do baskets, moccasins, beadwork, everything in our cultural arts I know how to do. I'm the director of the Jicarilla Cultural Arts and Heritage Center, and you had interviewed some of my coworkers, and we come from a very talented group of women and men, and keeping up our tradition for our culture. We have pottery, we have beautiful baskets, and these are from our museum collection, and these are old. This one's probably from the 60s. And to look at this and to think about the hands and the elders who had made them, some of them I remember, but some of them I haven't met I was too young or wasn't even born yet, but they're beautiful. I was raised here on the reservation all my life. I grew up with my grandmother, and I watched her do beadwork, and she would always take me to visit her sisters, her cousins, her aunts. All of them were talented. They did baskets, they did moccasins, dressmaking, and every little aspects of that. And at a young age, I looked at them, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And what caught my eye was pottery that stood out. At my grandma's shelf, they had the old pots, and they were old and dark, and they had the micaceous, like almost like the duck that I have in front of me, and the little sparks are the ones that drew my attention to pottery. I remember when I looked at them, I asked my grandma if she knew how to make pottery, and she said no. She said that she was too busy being a kid running around, and she said she remembers her grandmother making pottery, but she said she never caught on or bothered to learn at that age. It had died out from the great great grandmothers, and they were all phenomenal basket makers, dress makers, moccasin makers, and they had did that. So I watched them when I was little, and they had the old arts and crafts center, and I was just a little kid. My grandma would drop me off over there just to say hi to all my grandmas, and I had like probably 6 or 7 grandmas there, and I went to each table and said hi. Then they would give me candy, and I'd come out with a bunch of candy and soda. But I remember watching them and seeing their artwork they'd done, the loom work or the pottery, and not the pottery, the baskets and beadwork, moccasins. And I'd also my grandma would visit her aunts, and they would be sitting outside the house under an arbor shade, a traditional oak shade, and they would be making moccasins or beading. And I thought that was cool, and that's all they did. And it seemed so calm and peaceful there. But those are my inspirations as my grandmothers. But it never caught my mind that I'd actually learn. When I was little, I'd look at my grandma's beads and play with it, and she'd get mad at me, leave those alone. So I left it alone, and I guess later on in life, like maybe like in the fourth grade, I got her beads, and I was playing with it, and I guess she seen that, hey, I could do something. So she gave me some. I think the first thing did was keychains. She started me off with that, and I caught on, and I showed her. So after that, she showed me more stuff, how to do loom work and different beaded bags, just small stuff. So from then, I started gradually moving up, and I wanted to learn how to do moccasins. And her aunts were alive, and my grandma, my great grandmas, and they were Grace Maria, and she was the one that taught me moccasins. And my grandma and my aunt took me to her house, and I sat with her, and all I remember my aunt and mom saying is, "Don't ask questions, just sit there and watch." And I did, and I guess they taught me the old way. So I sat there, and she sat there, and she didn't really talk much, but she said you go like this, and she cut the moccasin out, put the holes, and she started sewing it. And next thing you know, she went part way, and then she finished it. And that was it. I was supposed to learn. So I walked away more confused, but I was like, And with determination, I tried, and I would ask her every now and then, and she would give me some advice. But I figured out how to do moccasins, and from then I started making moccasins. I started moccasins when I was probably like 21, and I kept doing it, and I still do it to this day. Right now I can whip out moccasins like in one day. People come to me, I do the women's and the men's moccasins. But that was with my grandmothers that I had learned, and I'd watch them do beading dresses outside, and they were real traditional older Apache women with braids, and I had a lot of respect for them. Um, with pottery, I was about 12 years old, and I was in a summer program, and we had an opportunity to learn pottery, and it was at a place called the Cultural Resource Center, and that's when I met Lydia Posada and her family, and they had been making they'd teaching a class. They were teaching a class in pottery making. I remember as a kid looking at the old pots that her grandma made, and I asked her, how, do you know how to make it? And nobody in the family knew how, but we had all the great grandmother's pots, and we still have them to this day. And they were old and black and very thin. They were kind of crude. They weren't so nice as the pots are today, but they were used for cooking, and that's what they needed it for. So anyway, grandma said she never paid attention, so it was lost. So at 12 years of age, I met Lydia Posada, and she was teaching a pottery class. I took her pottery class, and I just caught on, and I started making pots. And we had a little shop there, and sometimes occasional tourists would come by and buy stuff from us. And I remember selling my first pot. It was a bean pot. It was probably about this big, and I sold it for 150. And I was so proud. And I was like, wow. And I started making more, and I was like, hey, I can make money off of this. So then I started making more pots, and then I started, I just got into pottery making. And at the age of 12, I have never missed going to the clay pits. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, every year I've gone to the clay pits. I'm over 50 now, and I'm still going to the clay pits. Um, they had taught me, when I was learning with Lydia Posada, I met Felipe Ortega, and he was a Jicarilla descent potter. And he didn't live on the reservation, but he lived closer to the clay pits. And he learned from Jicarillas who had lived and stayed there in the area. And that's where I had learned it from. And from him and Lydia is where I began my life with micaceous pottery. At that time when I was learning, Jicarilla Apache pottery was non-existent, and Felipe and Lydia they had brought it back literally. And from then I started doing pots over the years, and going later, like probably in my teens, I started going to art shows. And one of the main things was I didn't know Jicarilla Apaches make pottery, and that was the main. It was like it really upset me, and that was the big thing. Like people, Apaches never made pottery, but over the years, I've been up to shows. I've done workshops and in magazines and promoting, and nowadays, it's known that we make pottery. I do know how to do what do you call it, tanning hides, and I did all these for preservation, I guess. And so I wanted to learn everything, even basketry. That is predominantly the women's, and I'm pretty sure pottery was too, but it died out. But I had to learn just in case it dies out. So now I know how to do this, and it was important to me. And now it's important after Felipe's gone and nobody, you know, there are people in the tribe that make pots, but I don't see it going like the way I do. I'm constantly making pots almost every month, and I enjoy making pottery, and coming out with new designs. I there's special things that you go when you dig clay. You just don't go and dig a hole in the ground. You have to offer prayers and tell Mother Earth why you're doing it and offer corn pollen and then start digging and getting what we need. And I usually go, our clay pits are our ancestral clay pits, and we don't have clay pits here on the reservation. We have to drive 3 hours west of here, no, east of here. And it's up way up in the mountains. And from being with Felipe at an early age, I went to Santa Fe Indian School. On the weekends, sometimes I'd stay at his place in La Madera. And he'd take me in the mountains, and he showed me like the old campsites where the Apaches had been, and I didn't know that. And I learned a lot from him. What they did back in the days was they would take a group up the mountains. They would dig the clay and prepare the clay and make pottery, finish it, and fire it. And they'd come back down the mountains and they would sell it to the Pueblo or the Hispanic peoples. And that was their way of bartering and making a living. It was predominant in the late 1800s and 1900s. And, you know, when I research pottery, it goes way far, as back as the 16 and 17 from what archaeologists have found. So it goes way back. And when I was coming out into the pottery scene, it was hard to teach, and our presence of pottery was really low. So I think it's come a long way now, and there's respect for that we do make pottery. When I start on a piece, sometimes it don't want to be what it wants to be. It changes. I said, you just have to go with what the clay tells you. Like I can't think of, but one of the ladies wanted to make a picture, but it turned out to a bean pot. And I said, that's exactly what I go through in my creation. I said, sometimes it be something totally different, and I just go with whatever it asks me to make. I do both traditional and contemporary pottery. Like this here is more a traditional pot, the cooking pot, and our pottery is not painted, so it has this micaceous slip, and this is called the fire cloud, and we fire our pottery upside down like this. And we always leave an opening. So here's the design. It goes all the way around and it ends here. So we leave an opening here. It's like a spiritual line. And some of the baskets, it's the same way. Like here, this basket has one here. It's open. So I was taught to always leave an opening in anything that I do. So I always do that in my pottery. So this is the rope applique, and I have 4 to symbolize the 4 directions. And then the mountains, and this is a rope design. So a lot of my work is from the mountains. As you can see, we live in the mountains, and we always have reverence towards where we live. I do contemporary pieces like this duck here. This is a water jar here by my foot. Here's a contemporary piece. I made it out of a basket. So I have the form of a basket and I put the clay in there. I feel proud when I see my work in museums. Like I have some in the Arizona State Museum. I have baskets and pottery in there. One basket and 1 pot there. And I go there and I was like, hey, that's mine. I took some of my family members there. And it's good to know that in the future, I'll always be in the museum. Like I travel a lot to do pottery workshops. People invite me, other tribes. I had the opportunity to work with most of the Apache tribes within the U.S., except Mescalero, the White Mountain, the San Carlos, the Camp Verde Apaches, and they invited me there with the Herd Museum. I did an artist program. So we went to those different reservations and I taught Jicarilla pottery to them. I've gone to the Sequan tribe. They invite me to do pottery workshops. So I've been to all over the United States. But I recently had met with this lady that I met at Santo Domingo Indian Market. Her name's Alicia. And she asked, do you do pottery workshops? I said, yes. And she's is there hotels there? Can we come to you? And I was like, I never thought about that. So we talked about it and she's like, what if we go camping? And I was like, that's a good, yeah, we can. I said, I have teepees. I said, you guys can stay in teepees. So they came, and this past weekend it came true for our workshop. And we had a bunch of people from all over the country coming here to do a workshop with me. And I was like, this I might, we might do this again, and maybe it get bigger. But we also invited our local Jicarilla Apaches, so it's mixed workshop that we've done, and we're doing it here on my family's beautiful homelands here in the mountains. And we're camped, and this is our last day, the last night here. So anyway, I had started this pot for the class, and right now I was gonna burnish it, and it's probably dried out now. But this is my micaceous slip, and I just put the mica on here, and this is slip, and then you use a stone to polish it. So I haven't finished it yet. I'm still working on it, but it's a work in progress. This is a picture. So I do a lot of utilitarian work. That's what the micaceous pottery was intended for. I love clay. I could never get tired of it. I love going to shows. I love coming up with new ideas and being on top of my game. And that's important, being innovated with new ideas. And I look at artists and they do the same old thing. And I think the secret is to keep coming up with new ideas than to be doing the same thing. I love working with it because it's calming, and a lot of my students said that they can feel the energy, the healing power of the clay. And in my case, the shininess is beautiful. That's what I'm addicted to, of the shininess. It is connected to our land, and like I said, we have our mountains. We always revere our mountains. We always put the mountain designs, and our beadwork has the mountain designs. Nobody wore the Apache dress, the buckskin dress, but the part here that the women wear, that's the mountains. So the mountains is very significant to us. It protected us, and we went to the plains, then we came back to the mountains for protection. So it was very, very powerful place. Like the elders have said, like the Sangre de Cristo Mountains is the backbone to our Aboriginal territory. In 1887 is when our reservation was established, but prior to that, the Jicarillas lived past Taos and the San Luis Valley into the panhandle of Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and that's where our original Aboriginal territory is from. And even the western part of where we're at now is the boundaries of where we used to live. My grandma had told us that our family came from Cimarron, not from the city or the town, but in the general area in the mountains. And she had always said that they had lived near water, a source like their river. So I've been that way, and then it has a special feeling driving there. And I wondered where our family came, where they lived, or where they camped at. And my grandma's grandma, her name was Oha, and she was the one that made pottery. So those pots are the ones that we have in our family today. And my grandma said when she was in her late hundreds, she lived to be 101, and she always yearned to go back to Cimarron. And she never could because we were confined to the reservation that we currently live on. Some people know it, it's lost in their families, but I know people come from the San Luis Valley, from the mountains in Cuchara, from Las Vegas, and all the way up to Pikes Peak, and they talk about where their families come from. And I'm proud to say our family came from Cimarron area, but they could have been anywhere in that whole region where we used to be. I recently did a pottery workshop, and I took a group of Jicarilla Apaches to our clay pits, and we had showed them, especially the youth, and I guess their parents never told them, this is where we used to live. So when we were in the area, I told them this is our original homeland. I said Dulce wasn't, we never lived there. Well, we probably roamed this far, but we didn't live there. Our land is on that side. And they're like, then they looked at their parents like, is it true? And it's like, and their family's like, yeah, and see, they don't tell the younger kids about that. But my grandmother had always told us stories. I'd sit on her lap or sit with her and just pick at her mind, and she would tell me bits and pieces. And I'm glad that, she had told me stuff like that, and, historical facts. Even going to when we went to San Luis Valley, that was my first time going to the sand dunes, and it was had a spiritual. It was so beautiful. It was like unreal to see everything. It looked like it would look fake, it's like, but it was powerful just seeing the dunes. And my one of my cousins had said that the chief was actually born up in the mountains, up San Luis, near the dunes. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that. She's like, yeah, our grandpa was born there. On my grandfather's side, we come from chiefs. Our great great grandfather is Chief Garfield Velarde, and this is actually his territory, his land, and even on the other, when you're coming in here, his house is there. This is my family's home. My mother and her siblings were born and raised here, and we have a homestead here, an old ranch house, and a barn, and this is what has been in our family since the reservation era, since the chief Garfield Velarde. It's beautiful here. And coming out here when you have a stressful day and you want to release, like it comes here and it has a special power, nature, and it soothes me and helps me out. Garfield Velarde is a chief. He was a chief of mainly the Oyero clan, the white clan of the Jicarilla Apache. Of each clan, each band, they have different chiefs. So he's not the chief of the whole tribe. So he would have a band for the Oyeros. And so when they got together, they had Oyeros and Llaneros. That's the red and the white clan. Oyeros are the mountain people and pottery makers from Oyero. And the Llaneros are the plains people, and they lived on the plains. They also live on the mountains, but that's the two distinctions. We still know which clans we come from to this day. We're all one tribe, but when it comes down to our annual feast in September, our tribe, we divide, and it's a ceremonial race between our two clans. And it's a beautiful experience to come see, and we have teepees and all lit up, all set up in the valley. I have to keep on educating other people that there's different Apache tribes. We're not all like the Western Apaches, and we dress different from them. We lived in teepees, and we're more plains people. The women tied their hair in buns. Back in the days, you look at the old pictures, and we made pottery. I went to boarding school, and that's where it really made a difference. Like I was with the Pueblos and the Navajos, and then well, I knew I was Apache, but that's where it was like, oh, I'm proud to be Apache. But I went to school with a lot of Pueblos and, like I said, Navajo, and that made me more proud of who I am. To me, it's preserving our culture because, like I said, it died out, and now I'm I'm teaching, I teach as much as I can, especially to our people. I want to expose the youth in our pottery tradition. So it's important before I die to keep this going since it died out. So I'm always trying to help and preserve it, and see what I can do. That's why I learned how to do deer tanning and baskets, and I got some negativity from the tribe because basket is only for women, but um, I was approved by the old cultural committee that was here, and most of those people have passed on, and they were the elders, the, and they had approved, and they seen that it was for cultural preservation. And now you interviewed my staff that was here in the tribe. That's how much basket weavers. We only had 5 of them, and they don't think about it. And I had 2 ladies mention to me that they want to retire. So I'm like, oh my God, I need to find more people to work with us. And we had the young ladies, Keisha and Tana, that you had interviewed. They're the new ones we're trying to train. And then 2 said they might be retiring. Then I'm like, oh my God, we're right there where we could lose it. So it's very important to do that. And that's why I learned, and I know how to do baskets in case things like this happen, at least I know, and I do show them and teach them. I never thought I'd be in this position, like to be a cultural bearer and and keep it going. I'm just hoping that this keeps going with our current situation in teaching. I mean, I'm like I said that there's only like so many basket weavers now weaving, and it's kind of it's scary to know that it could go or it couldn't, but it's up to people like us and my department to keep it going. It's on the verge of that. It's right on the top. Be it can go extinct and gone, or it could keep going. So it's my job to keep this our artwork going as long as I can.